Investec Asset Management has a new name, 91. We're changing our name, but not who we are. 91, investing for a world of change. Visit 91.com to learn more. 91 is an authorized FSP.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
All right, it's 25 minutes now to 8 the time. Of course, the big focus of today is going to be COVID-19 and the results of the President's announcements last night. We do understand that at around 10 o'clock, some of the government ministers are going to be speaking. I was speaking to Kathy Mokhahlana. She'll be with you from 9 today in Fubongi, and she says that they're probably going to take that live once that starts. So there'll be more developments on this today. There'll be other people that they'll be speaking to as well. We are going to take just a short break away from it. We thought that was important to continue with your mediated conversation because the issue that we're talking about is important. It's also a chance to focus on what I think is good news for most people. So that is what we're going to do. But if there are any developments between now and 9 o'clock on COVID-19, we will, of course, bring them to you here. Last week, the Competition Commission and Vodacom announced that the cell phone network would be cutting its data prices by around 30%. This will have a particular impact on prepaid bundles. The 1 gigabyte bundle that Vodacom sells will now go from 140 Rand to just 99 Rand. While there's been no agreement yet between the Commission and MTN, it does appear that MTN is likely to make a similar announcement soon. This would mean that for the majority of the country that uses prepaid data, there'll be a big difference in the amount of data that you can use. At the same time, many education websites and government sites will now be zero rated. In other words, if you need to go to the health department website, you'll be able to look at them without having to pay. So then, what are the implications of this, and will the cost of data continue to fall? In other words, will it actually be cheaper than it's going to be in a few weeks' time? First this morning, you'll hear from the journalist Jan Vermeulen from the organisation My Broadband about the implications of this for you, the user. Then we'll speak to the acting chair of the Independent Communication Authority of South Africa, ICASA. That is Dr. Kebeetswe Morimweng, the acting chair of ICASA, who will ask if they expect prices to drop still further. Then Koketso Moeti is the executive director of the organisation Amandla.mobi. It helps communities organise themselves using cell phones and data. And finally, Kristal Duncan is from Youth Capital. She is someone who looks at the price of data and how that helps people who are searching for jobs. We start then with Jan Vermeulen, editor-at-large at My Broadband. Jan, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. It's good to be here.
Okay, we understand that this is going to have big implications for people. Presumably it means we'll be able to get a lot more information, a lot more data, watch a lot more videos than we did in the past, and it means we'll be more productive.
Yes, that's the hope, and that we'll pay far less for it. So the price decreases that Vodacom have agreed to implement on the 1st of April brings the price of its 1 gig data bundle in line with Telkom's, which has been 99 Rand since living memory of ATA. I think that they've offered that kind of pricing. And so I think the Competition Commission also hopes that while its focus is on Vodacom and MTN, that by forcing the big two to drive their prices down, Telkom and Cell C will follow suit to remain competitive.
What that effectively means is that Telkom is not everywhere, but Vodacom is almost everywhere. It means that you are now, if you're in a rural area in the Eastern Cape and there's Vodacom coverage, you might now be able to buy data for the same price as someone in Jozi.
Yes, and the other thing that the Competition Commission has been looking at, even though that there's been a tremendous focus on just getting the price of data down all round, is to decrease the discrepancy between cheaper data bundles or a lower capacity data bundles. So people who are buying 10 meg here, 20 meg there, versus gigabytes and gigabytes of data, which are much cheaper per megabyte than the smaller ones are. And so it's been looking at reducing that gap as well, because it is quite discriminatory towards poor people who can only afford the little amounts of data at a time.
Where is MTN in all of this? I mean, we first planned to have this mediated conversation on Thursday. I looked at my script yesterday to check that nothing had changed, and MTN still hasn't changed their prices.
Right. So MTN is apparently still in negotiations with the Competition Commission, and it says that it'll make an announcement soon, and we're expecting something from them before the end of the month.
Okay. There's a correlation between cheaper data and more economic activity. Presumably,
Right.
Then, this means that it could bring some much-needed economic growth into the system.
Yes, that's certainly the hope, or at least, stave off some of the declines that we're going to see due to the spread of COVID-19 and other factors that have pushed us into recession. But yes, there's an undisputed link between people coming online and people participating in the economy.
Okay, all of this has come through the Competition Commission. There is the regulator ICASA as well. In some ways, I know they've tried to get data prices down. It seems they found it quite difficult to do that.
Right, because the second you try to regulate prices, you open yourself up to a court challenge. So the Competition Commission has some jurisdiction over this, and honestly, I'm surprised Vodacom and MTN didn't take the matter to court to say you have no right to regulate a incredibly competitive market, but instead went to the negotiation table to reach some kind of settlement with the Commission. What ICASA has done is amended its end user and service its end user and subscriber service charter regulations to try and make networks behave better. But that's been a bit of a mixed bag. Networks came back and with amendments to the thing, which there was some negotiation between ICASA and them, and so the regulations turned out far weaker than we had hoped. So we'd hoped to get rid of what we call the oob shark, out of bundle data billing. But I see that Vodacom and MTN still include out-of-bundle billing on their new prepaid SIMs by default.
All right, Jan Vermeulen, thank you very much indeed. Editor-at-large at My Broadband. 19 minutes now to 9 the time. Let's speak now to the acting chair of the Independent Communication Authority of South Africa, and that is Dr. Kebeetswe Modimoeng. Dr. Modimoeng, good morning and thank you for your time.
Greetings, Steve, and greetings to the listeners.
Firstly, I presume you welcome the outcome of all of this, that data prices are now going to be lower for people who use prepaid data.
Indeed, as the authority, we welcome the developments of an agreement reached last week. It is but a step, one of the many steps that we are embarking on as regulators. You would appreciate that the Competition Commission has a particular, regulatory flexibility to can intervene in the manner they have. Where they reached an agreement with one particular licensee over a specific matter. Now, as the authority, we are busy with our own process, which we hope to conclude in the next 9 to 10 months, and that will, look into the data service market to really strengthen regulations in that space. Now, the Competition Commission looked at it from a retail point. But as the authority, we are also looking at it from a wholesale point of view, so that we come with an all-encompassing intervention that will bind industry as a whole. So I think, we welcome those developments because indeed it is in the public interest that costs are going down. We hope MTN will also come to the party through the Competition Commission route. But on our side, we are busy. And of course, with the spectrum issue, hands on deck, because spectrum is a key requirement in assisting with this decline in the cost to communicate.
I'm going to come to spectrum in just a moment because it's such an important issue. You play a role in regulating cell phone companies. Have you found it quite frustrating to try and get them to lower their prices? I mean, and I'm very clear, I'm very, very much understanding of what Jan Vermeulen has said, that they will take you to court, and they have done in the past when you tried to bring down voice prices. You were successful in the end. But have you found it quite frustrating that you haven't been able to have the impact on cell phone data prices that you might have wanted to have?
Yeah, look, I think, you see, the issue is that we've got very prescribed processes we have to follow in amending regulations or formulating new regulations and so forth. It's a very involved process which unfortunately, requires time. Jan rightfully mentioned our intervention in the end user subscriber service charter regulations, which we amended to deal with data expiry, out of bundle billing, bill shock, and so forth. To some extent, I would say we've just ran an impact assessment study to check what impact that has had. We are analyzing the findings soon. But the point is, our processes are very prescribed. And, not so long ago, voice was the biggest issue, where the cost of voice was high. ICASA back then had to come up with measures. And indeed, there has been, at an interconnection point, a decline in the cost of voice. Now then, the battlefield changed from voice largely to now data. We first had to define data as a market, which is a process. We had to follow different steps, also in the interest of minimizing if not eradicating prospects of litigation. So it has been a challenge indeed, but I think we are winning. I think we are winning if I'm now at the point where I can say within the next 9 to 10 months, there will be some very concrete announcements from our side. Okay. I think it shows, yeah.
All right, the issue of spectrum, and I mean, part of the problem here is about digital terrestrial television. If we were able to switch off the analog VHF, UHF television signals, there'll be a lot more spectrum for cell phone companies to use. Are you playing much of a role in all of this, and are you in harmony with the Communications Ministry on this?
Yes, Steve. I think on the part of the 700 and 800 spectrum bands, indeed, you rightfully captured it. It works, hand in glove with the DTT process. We are in close contact with the ministry, and we are, assisting in the best way we can as the authority where needed to enable the department to move towards the switch-off date. But in as far as the spectrum licensing process is concerned, as announced by the President during the State of the Nation in February, by December of 2020, we will license high-demand spectrum to industry via an auction. So it will happen in December of 2020. Process is currently underway, and we hope and truly believe that once that spectrum is licensed to industry, it will bring, much-needed relief, because spectrum brings capacity. It enables network operators to roll out, networks to the vast rural areas of our country, and it also ease off the constraints they have, which will then help in the generation of data at a much lower cost. So we are really tackling this from all angles.
Okay, and the issue of 5G spectrum, are you starting a process with that?
Yeah. So as you would recall, we had an information memorandum which closed on the 31st of Jan. We are currently analyzing, and in the next 3 months or so, we will come up with a final invitation to apply, which will include the final spectrum bands that we will be issuing. In the information memorandum, we included, the bands which are regarded largely as 5G bands, which is the 2.3 and the 3.5. But the final determination, of course, will be in the invitation to apply in the next 2 months or so.
Dr. Modi Moeng, I do appreciate the time. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thanks, Steve.
The acting chairperson of the Independent Communication Authority of South Africa there, Dr. Kibetswe Modi Moeng. Your mediated conversation continues 12 minutes to 9. We are keeping an eye out for any developments around COVID-19. If there is something, we will interrupt our mediated conversation on that. Let's speak now to Koketso Moeti, the Executive Director of Imandla.mobi, joining us now on SAFM. Koketso, good morning.
Good morning to you.
How much of a difference is all of this going to make for people who really rely on prepaid data? And I'm talking about people who have to, say, use Vodacom or MTN if they come to the party because of where they are. They're in a rural area outside a major centre. How much of a difference is it going to make for them?
I think it's a step in the right direction. One of the things I would have appreciated, the Competition Commission gave an entire full-blown service guaranteeing certain basic access, right? Which means that there will be targeted, personalized discounts for people living in poor areas, in poor communities. And these are expected to be quite significant, and this will be targeted at about 2,000 localities. I think what I would have appreciated, in the same way that the price for the big bundles was explicit, it was clear what it was. In this instance, the Competition Commission and Vodacom settlement says that discounts on the smaller bundles will not be disclosed for competition reasons. While I commend all of the work that has been done, without a doubt, I think this aspect of transparency, it would have been good for the Competition Commission and Vodacom to be as transparent about how much these ones are decreasing for. I think for us, particularly as an organization that has been primarily concerned with the issue of price discrimination, right? Which means those who are buying smaller bundles are paying so much more than those buying bigger bundles. It would have been a key thing for us. But nevertheless, the entire approach is definitely welcome, because by settling or approaching it in the way they did, a long, drawn-out, costly legal battle was avoided, and some kind of immediate relief was provided.
Koketso, it does seem that the cell phone companies will still make a profit despite these changes, right? Which then makes you wonder about the level of profit they were making before these changes. The level of profit, in fact, they're making right now because the changes only come into effect on the 1st of April. Could there be a case, he says, opening a can of worms, could there be a case to say that Vodacom and the other and MTN should pay back some of the profit they've made all these years?
Without a doubt, look, when Vodacom quantified the amount these savings are going to cost, they were talking about 2.7 billion per year, right? But if we consider the decades of profiteering that they have been, it's really, they are just, they are just really, they got off lightly in so many ways. But again, I'm not going to undermine the importance of this step. It's a move in the right direction, But yeah, given all of this years of the exploitation, of the deep exploitative pricing, of the ways in which they are pickpocketing the poor beyond price, things like getting your value for money, right? Data shouldn't be expiring, and there was a process around data rollover. If we remember, when the regulations came into place, we saw the networks yet again act in bad faith, right? Where they turned to the courts to try and stop the regulations being put to place. They also tried to attach certain conditions. I remember Vodacom had wanted to charge people for their data to roll over. And for those with smaller bundles, the amounts you were going to be charged sometimes cost more than the bundle you were actually buying, right? So it made no sense. Consumer backlash forced them to remove this. But still, they have set other conditions in place, such as you have to buy a bundle of the same size for your data to roll over, right? Which we know not everybody can afford the same bundle size all the time. And I think it's a way of also still getting people to spend to enjoy the benefits of the regulations, which is not okay. And it's something we have been challenging and will continue to work on. But yeah, there have been so many ways in which they are pickpocketing, and this is a welcome step in the right direction, but there's definitely still more to be done. It's only but one step.
Koketso Moeti, I do appreciate the time. Thank you. The Executive Director of the organisation Amandla.Mobi. In a moment, we'll continue with Kristal Duncan. She'll explain what this means for people who are using data to look for jobs. 8 minutes to 9.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
5 minutes now to 9 the time. Continuing your mediated conversation, keeping an eye, of course, for any developments around COVID-19, the coronavirus. If there is anything, we will bring it here. We will bring it to you here on SAFM. And Kathy Mokgagana is standing in for Bongi today. She'll have more on it for you. But we are continuing with your mediated conversation, which is the reaction and the implications of that announcement last week with the Competition Commission by Vodacom that it's dropping the prices of its prepaid data bundles by a third to 99 Rand. And of course, we expect MTN in some way to follow suit. Youth Capital is an organisation that helps young people find jobs. Its project leader is Kristal Duncan. Kristal, good morning.
Good morning. And just to clarify, you have quite a different campaign. So we're actually trying to be a systems disruptor. So we're not pairing young job seekers with possible employers, but rather trying to capacitate young people to call for action in the policy space, in the decision-making spaces, and decisions like this one by Vodacom definitely are the kinds of things we're trying to get our network of young people to push for.
Okay, so obviously you're using data to do that. I mean, when the price of data goes down, it becomes easier to organize, right?
Absolutely. And also, the research from South Africa shows that young people are spending anywhere between 380 and 550 Rand a month on looking for work. Now, you can imagine you're in a poor household, there is nobody who is employed. The cost of looking for work is just too high, and it's not surprising that the number of young people who give up looking is so high. And so this could really change that situation for young South Africans.
Do we know how much of a barrier this is? I mean, how many people find this a barrier? And there's so many different things to consider. On the one side, there's the lack of experience. The other side, there's the economy generally. I mean, if the economy was running at 2% unemployment, people would be knocking on doors asking who wants a job. That's not how our economy is. Do we know how much of a barrier this has been for young people?
Well, we've traveled across the country to 5 provinces at this stage in the last 2 years. And I think within our network, we've spoken to face-to-face nearly 500 young people, over social media, much more. And this issue of data always comes up. Young people will say that they look for work when they have money and they have to stop looking when they don't have money. Transport is also a huge barrier. If I have to get 1 million copies of things certified, that's also the data and transport are seen as equal barriers, I think, by young people, and it's definitely something that comes up all the time in our conversations.
Then there are other organisations that still require forms to be filled in. I think government still, at times, once I think it's called a Z83, they actually need the form to be filled in pen, for goodness sake.
Yes, I know. We've heard that as well, which I think in this day and age is absolutely ridiculous. And also the other thing is a lot of sites are not designed for mobile. So they're like, oh, we have an online application system. But all young South Africans, majority of them don't have laptops or desktop PCs. They're using it, they're accessing these sites via their phones. And so you really need to make sure that the site can manage that. And that's why, we welcome the Vodacom agreement as a first step, but we think there's lots more steps that need to follow. And one of them is to zero rate all public benefit organization websites and not just the 7 or whatever Vodacom identifies. Because you're kind of limiting. You're saying to young people, this is where we think you need the information, or to general South Africa, this is what the information we think you need, instead of saying, well, here's all this information, use it to kind of improve your lives, to online learning, or find jobs, or connect yourself to even just nutritional information for your baby. We really think that the zero-rated website service needs to vastly expand its offering.
Kristal, Duncan, thanks very much indeed. Project leader at the organisation Youth Capital. All right, that brings an end to your mediated conversation today. Before Kristal, you heard from Koketso Moeti, the executive director at imandla.mobi. Before her, the
Investec Asset Management has a new name, 91. It was the year we launched, a time of transformative change, which taught us that active investing could be a force for good. We're changing our name, but not who we are. We're the same people with the same passion for our clients. The times that made us, named us. 91. Investing for a world of change. Visit 91.com to learn more. 91 is an authorized FSP.